The Prime Minister has had a reflective and intimate meeting with Joe Biden at his personal residence in Delaware. Chief News anchor Kieran Gilbert is live from Philadelphia. Kieran, great to see you. So this could be the last official meeting between the pair.
Yeah, it could be, Janie. This is, the final stages, really, of Joe Biden's presidency. We know he's wrapping up in a few months. He's not recontesting in November. So there was, the way you put it is right. It was reflective and quite intimate. Have a look at these pictures that we've got of the meeting that took place in Delaware, in Wilmington, Delaware. It's on a lake, the president's personal residence. And you could hear from what the Prime Minister said that he was honoured to be the first international foreign leader invited to the personal residence for official talks. And yes, it is likely to be their last official meeting, but it was certainly an intimate one, as you can see from in the study. There was Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Ambassador Rudd, as well as the two leaders. And then they had 90 minutes of talk. So a time of reflection, but there was a time of substance there too. The Prime Minister wanted to make sure that his gratitude was known to the outgoing president.
It was an opportunity for me to express my support and congratulations for the role that President Biden has played. He has been a good friend of Australia, but he's also been an advocate for the rule of law, the role that he has played internationally in securing support for the people of Ukraine in the struggle that they are undertaking. The revitalisation and expansion, indeed, of NATO is one of President Biden's achievements that he has had during his time in office. His concentration on the Quad as well, and his engagement in the Indo-Pacific measures which history will record President Biden as being a driver of a very successful period in US foreign policy.
It's interesting, Janie, the Prime Minister's keen and happy to talk about certain things that are discussed on foreign policy and other matters. When it gets to personal things and those personal discussions, he won't go there, and he didn't go there when it came to what they spoke about in terms of the presidential race, the sensitive race between Trump and Harris. They clearly spoke about Donald Trump and the implications of another Trump presidency if he does win, but the Prime Minister didn't want to elaborate on exactly what was discussed in that context. In terms of his message about the alliance, though, he's been wanting to reiterate during his visit here that the alliance and AUKUS is on a firm footing.
I know from my own experience, one-on-one discussions I've had across the Congress and across the Senate, how deep the support for AUKUS is. And there is no question in my mind that AUKUS will continue to have the support of any future US administration.
Today's meeting, tomorrow's Quad Summit, all comes in the context and with the backdrop of the most extraordinary presidential election that we've seen for decades. 2 assassination attempts, this risk to political stability. And I asked the Prime Minister a question in that context.
This is a wonderful country, obviously, and it's a great democracy. But when you think about how close Trump came to being killed, it seems like the thread that holds it together is quite fragile. I guess it extends to any democracy, but how do you look at that and just how fragile sometimes democracy can be, particularly in the face of that political violence that you spoke of?
Democracy needs to be nurtured and needs to be cherished. It can't be taken for granted. And it is overwhelmingly in the world's interest. I believe in democratic principles and democratic systems, but we can't take it for granted. You know, I'm concerned personally at some of the surveys that show a decline in support for democracy amongst some young people in Australia. And I'm concerned that people don't value it, and it certainly can't be taken for granted, which is why we need to uphold democratic principles.
Now, our viewers know that the whole reason Joe Biden left the race was because there was a perception within the Democratic Party and more broadly that he wasn't up to it. That was not the case, according to Prime Minister Albanese, when it came to Joe Biden today. He said he's sharp and he's on it.
He's fit. He is totally on top of his brief. He is someone who it's a great privilege to spend time with. He is engaging, and he is someone who has served as Vice President of the United States for 8 years and President for nearing on 4, and someone who has such broad experience in the US Senate.
And they had some personal discussions, as we mentioned, spoke about the political race, but I'm sure President Biden would have reflected on his own journey over the last few weeks, how difficult that was to make that decision, the pressure he faced and so on. Again, the Prime Minister wouldn't go into the details of that, but clearly that was part of the mix. And I think as we wrap up this hour, Janie, the fair way to describe it is that it was a reflective and intimate final meeting between the pair as they gathered there at the home of Joe Biden in Delaware.
Yeah, well said, Kieran, and we'll talk to you no doubt across the rest of the weekend. Thank you so much.